3, 2, 1.
Good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome to the last show of College Lacrosse Live. We knew it had to come at some point. In our first episode, when we were doing bracketology, and you said, "Stop doing bracketology. I'm not going to watch College Lacrosse Live." Well, we knew it would get to this day where we would have to shelve it for at least 6 months. We'll see when we come back next. But we had a national champion, Princeton Tigers taking it. We had multiple national champions, by the way, Northwestern, Tampa getting it done. The only close game of the weekend on the men's side, Tampa getting it done. And then Tufts with that three-peat happening on the D3 side. Really excited episode that we have today. We also want to thank the UVA AD and athletic department. I know there's not a lot of thanks to go around, but you guys are dropping news right before College Lacrosse Live every single day. But Zach, dude, how was it in Charlottesville, man? I'm excited to hear the stories. How you doing?
It was cool. You know, the last time I was at a Final Four was in like 2006. You know, Notre Dame and Duke were in the finals that year, so I was a kid. Going back and kind of now getting to see people that I've only seen on the internet, right? And now I've got a handshake to go with the Twitter avatars. It was a lot of fun. Shout out to Harlan and Chris. I said, look for the O's hat and say hello. And, you know, somewhat shockingly, two people actually did. I told Harlan, he was the first guy that came up and said hi. I was like, you just totally blew my mind. Like when these things that are online and the internet only like bleed over into the real world, like that's a wild experience. So shout out to you guys and everybody that was there. It was an awesome weekend.
You know, you said all of that, and all that was great, and I want to give the shout out to the viewers out there who stopped Zach. What I just heard was Zach was at the last Notre Dame loss in the national championship, so maybe stop going. Also, I didn't know you were a Notre Dame alum, by the way. I caught that. You hid that the entire season, but
the funny thing is that it was because I'm at the game, and honestly, like Princeton is one of the first teams that I worked with. From a stat side. And so like my kids have grown up rooting for Notre Dame. So like we're sitting there and they're rooting for Notre Dame. And I'm sitting, like pretty much all the teams that were there, like, when you do this long enough, you don't really have any favorites. My kids are sitting there in their Notre Dame football jerseys and we're watching the game and they weren't really that happy, but I've known the Princeton guys and worked with them for a while. So it's kind of like, there's once you do this long enough, there's no good or bad outcomes really.
Sure. I like that. Classic Lax Reference take there. Cat Haller saying Princeton showed why they're the number one team in the country, and that's all I have to say about that. They came lock, stock, and two smoking barrels in Notre Dame. What's crazy about this, and we'll get to it in just a second, it felt like that was the opposite in the first 2 to 3 minutes of the game. I mean, it felt like Notre Dame was going to run away with the game. 3-0. Madelon called a timeout, and everything shifted from there. A lot to do with its own defense that we saw, throughout the first half and into the second as well. They kind of shift. It was a master class on both sides of the ball. More so on the coaching. You look, defense, you have to work hard as shit, all that stuff to make a zone happen. But the coaching of going back into the zone and then back to the man. But on the offensive side of the ball, my goodness, just the same. You had guys who were doing their jobs. I told a colleague that it was as close to perfect as you can get in a national championship game. That offense, it could have been in the 20s.
Yeah.
If not for Riccardelli. Riccardelli played really, really well in this game, and it still was not close. But
And the funny thing was, I was expecting Princeton to have, if there was a reason that you say they have a shot still when they were down 3-0. I was thinking it was going to be McMeekin, right? At the faceoff dot, and can he go and win 70% of the draws and just give them that possession edge? But I mean, Notre Dame was actually pretty close from a faceoff perspective. It was just the Princeton that was Notre Dame's worst adjusted offensive efficiency of the season. Like that, and I think that's really the story of this game, is what the Princeton defense was able to do.
Yep.
Against this Irish offense and playing their best defensive game of the season.
Majerus and Jeffrey were two of the just dynamic Dodgers in the nation. I mean, you put them in the top 10. The athleticism there, and in the first 3 minutes of this game, you were like, there's no way these guys are going to keep up. And they were completely stifled. It looked like they were a U15 team and it was the first time they'd seen a zone. And it completely stifled Majerus and Jeffrey. I think Iago still had his time to shine. I think he had 3 points. Let me go and make sure that is correct. Angrick had 3. Josh Iago had 3. But Faison, Majerus, and Jeffrey, those 3 guys are dynamic Dodgers. And that zone held them all to 1 point.
Right.
Insane.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm so focused on stats. I'm not a tactician, right? It's not when they switched to zone. I don't notice that necessarily, but I do remember sitting there and watching the game, and I was just like, gosh, the Princeton guys are doing a great job getting their sticks into the passing lanes. I mean, it seemed like there were 4 or 5 possessions that ended and just ended because they just snagged the ball out of the air, they knocked it away. And looking back, right, obviously that's a big element of the zone, right? They're packing it in, they're not letting Notre Dame kind of pass through the zone. I think that was a big key for them, is that they didn't necessarily have a way to attack it that didn't involve risky passes, and Princeton was just doing such a great job of picking those off that it was something.
It was very clear that those 3 guys were not elite at picking apart a zone. Whenever you play against a zone, you have to have guys. Like, it felt like Iago was kind of stepping into that role a little bit. I think they mentioned it on the cast, actually. They're saying, Iago looks like he's QBing it from the top wing. You got to have guys at least 3, in my opinion, that can really kind of find an area, step in, make the one more. And they did not have that. You basically had Iago and maybe one more guy who felt confident moving the ball in a zone. Whereas in man-to-man, they look extremely confident. The space that's created, just everything that they do in man-to-man feels a little bit like Notre Dame was the dominant team. But anyways,
I think the contrast with the Syracuse game was so stark in that, like, it just seemed like Notre Dame was just constantly having guys open from 8 yards out.
Yes,
they were getting into the teeth of that defense, and it was the flip side of that is against Princeton, they were never getting into that area. Everything was a low angle shot or coming off the up from X. I mean, the contrast between the looks that Notre Dame got in those 2 games was remarkable.
Yes. And again, confidence playing against a zone is important. Right. You're just stepping into the right spots. Majerus, Jeffries, they just did not look like they were confident playing against it. So again, shout out. I know we got in the weeds there early. We want to get back out. We're going to pull ourselves out of the weeds because for the second straight week we've had, or maybe it wasn't last week, maybe it was the week prior to that, but we had some breaking news basically happen with the Virginia program right before we pressed live. Again, Zack basically being like, hey, did you see the message? This was 5 minutes before we pressed live. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to set up for this show. There's a lot that goes into this stuff. But anyways, he broke the news to me that Kevin Cassese is now the new head coach at UVA. This is reported by Inside Lacrosse. At least what we have on. Again, it's probably announced from the athletic department. Kevin Cassese is the ideal leader person and coach to usher in the next era of Virginia men's lacrosse. This is coming from athletic director Carla Williams. He embodies the integrity and competitive excellence that have defined this championship program for many decades. Kevin is highly regarded as a fantastic coach and an even better person. He is a winner off and on the field. Zach, your first reaction, I guess, give me the raw reaction that you have from seeing Kevin Cassese being named head coach here.
I mean, I think, can you imagine stepping into a better situation, right? From a lacrosse perspective, they were end of the year 5th in offensive efficiency. They were 13th in terms of defensive efficiency. A lot of their players that were responsible for that were young guys. Like we're going to get a chance to see what all those strong years at Lehigh, right? Like what can he do with this sort of roster? Because again, I mean, it's not like, oh, this is a team that's going to be losing a lot of their players. They're not going to be losing a lot to graduation. They've got Brennan Millen, who is one of the best freshmen in the country, back. And so it's a great situation to walk into. And, it's now we get a chance to see if he can do it in the ACC.
I'm going to put my just objective hat on. I want to know what Kevin Cassese's last 2 or 3 years at Lehigh looked like. The years that he has been at UVA have not been great. He was not there for the national championships. If I am mistaken, call me out. It's not like they've been overly great with Kevin Cassese having the reins as offensive coordinator once Kerwin left. I need to see his last 2 to 3 years at Lehigh. I remember his great years at Lehigh. Don't get me wrong. Those teams were awesome. They were connected. They fought hard. Kevin Cassese was one of my favorite coaches at that time. I was still in the college coaching ranks. And I just wonder, what the reasoning behind this hire was, because there were probably better guys out there from a more recent success standpoint.
Yeah.
There were reports that Dan Chamati pulled out at the last minute. John Galloway was part of that coaching search. That was a name that wasn't really thrown out, at least here on the show and in my kind of circles, that I thought would have been a great hire. Galloway's done phenomenal at Jacksonville. I know that's a step up in time there, or in quality of kind of blue chip UVA's in the ACC, but I like John Galloway there. But anyways, thoughts on that, man?
I think that if you want to pick at the Lehigh tenure a little bit, I think there's only been a few face-off guys over the last decade that you really look at and say that guy flipped the field, right? Like, I mean, it's Baptiste, it's not a ton, right? I mean, Ireland and Sisselberger was that guy at Lehigh, and so that was a team that played with a huge possession advantage in a lot of those games. And UVA finished 11th in face-off percentage this year from an adjusted basis, so it's not like they were bad, but they also weren't dominant. And so I think that if you look at that and say, okay, like what is that Lehigh tenure look like if he doesn't have Sisselberger, which hypotheticals and all that stuff, but but still, it's not like we talked about UVA, and like this is a team that for a while everybody was thinking about, okay, might they end up playing at home on championship weekend, right? So I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's anything that's like Kevin Cassese cannot do it, right?
Sure.
I mean, there were moments during the season when they looked like they might be unbeatable. So, does that mean there's a consistency question? I don't know how you want to frame it, but I guess at the end of the day, like there's so much that goes into this sport in terms of the bounce of the ball and the recruiting aspect and all those things that, I think at this point he's got his shot, and, now it's time to prove it.
That undoubtedly is a correct answer. Now that he's in there, he has his shot. I'm looking at the Lehigh schedule from 2023. So if I'm not mistaken, 2023 would have been Cassese's last year, because he came in at 24, 25, and now 26. This is his third year. They were 10-5, so a very respectable record. They lost to Army 10-12 that year. They lost to Georgetown 15-17. So this is playing top teams, right? They lost to Boston 11-14. They're beating Loyola here. That's really, really respectable for a Lehigh team. Playing in the Patriot League. So I'm not saying that he's not qualified. I just think that there were probably more guys I would have turned to first. But who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, you get the steady pair of hands, and I think she even mentioned that in the comments that from the AD. And I mean, anytime you bring in somebody new, there's always a risk. And I think in a perfect world, right, you'd say, let's make sure that we're giving these young guys a chance and they're getting their shot at the big time. But there's also a risk averse component to this, and I'm sure that when they lined up all the candidates, one of the pros for him was he's here, everybody knows him. Yeah. It's the risk averse choice, which now we're getting into AD psychology and that sort of thing. But from that perspective, you can understand why they would make that decision.
I've never seen more drama around a coach's position in this sport. I cannot remember the last time there was more drama. I mean, the work that Matt Nessler has been doing, I've been following. I watched his YouTube Crease Dive podcast, his kind of breakdown. He's kind of been in the weeds behind the scenes. And
well, it's funny. The last time there was such a dramatic coaching thing was probably University of Virginia and Dom Starja.
Yeah, no, it's fair, and it turned out well for them. Yeah. In this category with the Lars hire. But Matt Nessler was going in depth about, apparently there were players, starters. He said a majority of players went to the AD. And so, we're not going to dive deep into this story. I think we can do that maybe sometime else. This is going to be primarily talking about the championship weekend that we just had and all that stuff, but we did have a breaking news of Kevin Cassese getting hired. A majority of players going to the AD about Lars, and that they also were backing up Kevin Cassese. So that could be another story that plays into this, Zach, of if you have the guy there that is that steady Eddie that you mentioned, not bringing in someone outside the program, and the players are also backing him up, you can see a result being played out where he gets hired as the head coach.
Right.
So I might come back to this story. I might not. I'm interested in how y'all think about this being named. Again, Kevin Cassese being named the next head coach for UVA lacrosse. It's been Starja, Lars, and now Cassese for the last, 25 years?
Yeah.
How long was Don there?
I mean, I don't know, but
he was there for a while.
Before I was paying much attention to college lacrosse.
Right. Okay. Cat Haller saying he's going back to what we should be talking about, which is this game. He said, like you said yesterday on Instagram, it was like Notre Dame had never seen a zone defense before. All right. Without further ado, let's play the final moments, I believe. Give me a bone here on whether I play the right clip, but I believe this is it.
Which is a big time number for a midfielder.
A whistle.
I'm completely shook on that. Yeah, wrong Tigers. I want to find the ending clip here.
This is a big time moment for Madelon. The roar has returned. Princeton is your national champion.
All right, there you see the victorious Tigers there, not the losing Tigers on the other side. But we did have Princeton taking home their first national championship since 2001. Congratulations to them. A lot of narratives to break down with this one. If you guys want to jump into the comment section, if you're here afterwards, or if you're here live with us, feel free to do so as well. We'd love to break that down with you guys. But a lot to break down. Princeton was the better team at the end of the day. When you talk about man-to-man all the way down the roster, how connected they were, how hard they fought, there's just no category where Notre Dame outclassed Princeton yesterday, and they took home the victory. I would love to get in behind the scenes on this one, Zach. What do you got?
I mean, I think the Princeton defense, to me, is the story of this tournament, right? I mean, they were 7 percentage points better in their 4 tournament games than they were in their previous, 15 games of the season. They 16% defensive efficiency after you adjust for opponents across that Marist, Penn State, Duke, and Notre Dame. I mean, so it wasn't, and honestly, it wasn't just this one game. I mean, the defense for them across this entire tournament was phenomenal. And that's, they've had good defenses. Like they ended up 5th in 2023. They were 7th in 2024. So it's not necessarily that this is a surprise for them, but I think we get so much about that offense, and they were so good yesterday. And Kabiri, to me, is the guy that probably is the front runner for the Tewaaraton. And so I think the defense kind of gets a little bit lost in all that. But this has been a great defense for many years. I mean, they had a hiccup last year. They finished 17th in defensive efficiency, but they're right back to where they've kind of been over the last several years. And so, to see the defense not just have a great game against Notre Dame, but like the way that they turned it on in the 4 games across the NCAA tournament was, to me, that's probably the story for them. Offense was great all year, but the way that they flipped the switch on defense was huge.
I love that we've gotten into the weeds on the data side of things and kind of meshing it with the on-field play, because to me, when I see an offense that effective, I mean, they were as close to perfect as you can get yesterday. And what that does for your defense, right? When you have an offense that is putting a ton of pressure. You scored 11 goals straight on the team. Like how much pressure that puts on the opposing offense to play. I'm not taking away anything from Princeton's defense. I think you hit the nail on the head. 16% efficiency. I don't care who's playing on the other side of the ball. You still have to go to work and do what you need to do. But, I mean, 11 goals straight. Yeah. It was a belt whacking yesterday, and that zone defense really gave them a hard time. We touched on that earlier in the episode. They switched in between that throughout the game. Jack Stahl did an amazing job on Josh Yago. I think Yago ended up with 2 goals and 1 assist. But Stahl did a fantastic job. He should, if Sean Light was going to win the Tewaaraton, I wish they did this like football, where if you win one award, you're not necessarily going to get the other one. But it did come through that Sean Light was a 2-time Schmeiser Award winner, best defender in the country. But I would have liked to see Colin Brown, who I have on the podcast, maybe be mentioned in that finalist. But we'll see. We'll touch on the Tewaaraton and where you think you're thinking Kabiri, correct?
I mean, it's hard to say no at this point. He throughout this tournament, he kind of inched his way ahead of Spallina in my player rating. So, not only that, like he's got obviously the trophy, and that has some weight to it too.
Has the trophy as well. All right, we've got a comment here. Notre Dame made a push right into the third quarter there, but it was met with resistance, and the lead was insurmountable. I didn't see him coming back at all. Yeah, there was a moment there. I think they had like a 3-goal run to make it close. You were sitting there at halftime like, holy mother of God, what do you say as a coach that you're trying to just survive the second half when it comes to an 11-0 run? The score was 11-3 at halftime. That is amazing to me. But Palumbo, as much as we talk about Kabiri, it felt like Palumbo was the one that really kind of just sparked the dominance with this Princeton team. He was the one with the short stick a lot of the times, which is insane to me. But again, Notre Dame's going to fall on that sword. They were going to trust their team defense. They're not the matchup heavy team. One of the things that you could have done and I'm not even in the same stratosphere as the Notre Dame coaches. You could have tried Sean Light on Palumbo.
Yeah.
You could have.
One thing that I felt like in that game, especially early on, there were a couple times where it just seemed like Notre Dame was really trying to put a physical stamp on the game. They were blowing up
high
picks.
hits.
And beyond that, I mean, blowing up picks every time someone was set a pick early for Princeton, they were just running the guy over. And the high hits, but also the problem was like Princeton, especially Palumbo, is like, you want to play big boy ball, like I'm more than happy to do that. And I know there were a couple where he just kind of like backed down his man essentially and got to the middle. And I think there was an element of like it kind of felt like Notre Dame came in and said, let's impose our physical will on this game. And Princeton was strong enough to absorb that. And then they're so talented that if we can bounce off those hits and then use our tic-tac-toe passing and our deadly shooters, like you almost got the sense that if Princeton had maybe said, oh, wow, this is a more physical game than we wanted to play, like it
Mhm.
might have worked out differently for Notre Dame. But I think ultimately they said, "Oh no, like we're fine doing that too," and that, from a styles perspective, made a big difference.
The ability to be dynamic in multiple is so key on the offensive side. If you just do one thing,
Mhm.
you're going to struggle. The best
Right.
defenses, especially a Notre Dame defense filled with athletes, is going to take advantage of that. I was very surprised, to your point. I was very surprised that the Notre Dame D mids did not have a better day. I mean,
Mhm.
they looked like they were getting torched
Yeah.
whenever they were called upon. I'm not saying that they had a terrible day, but they didn't have a great day
Yeah.
from my perspective. And that is, to your point, the Princeton went right at them. I would have liked to see a Sean Light switch onto Palumbo. Palumbo took over that first half, and he really sparked
Yeah.
that run, man. I mean, when there were maybe answers that weren't really answered yet, Palumbo just took over the game and said, "I'm doing it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing too, we know this when we did our preview of this, but like Luke Miller was a name to watch, and I think we mentioned it that like they had only lost when he was under 2 goals, they had lost two. That was two of their 2 losses, right? And they had only won one game where he was under 2 goals, and I think he ended up. What did he end up with? I mean, he had 1 goal and 1 assist yesterday. And so that was, yeah. So now that was the third game he was under 2, or fourth game he was under 2 goals, and it was the third time that they lost that game. So I think that's like, and nobody, I doubt Princeton was sitting there saying like we're going to focus on shutting down Luke Miller. But I think to your point, like if they were like, okay, I think we're going to be able to take away the athleticism enough, especially if we've got that zone in our back pocket, and make it a Yago only show, and they were successful. And I think he was a bellwether, and they were, it followed the pattern, right? They didn't get a big game from him, and it was loss number 3.
They completely took away Notre Dame's athletic advantage on that side of the ball. I mean, the first 3 goals showed you. They scored the first 3 goals in an absolute instant, and then said, "We're switching in this zone." And then once you pack that shit in, that shell is created, you're talking about Jeffrey and Maharis. They have to be elite or confident at breaking down the zone. It didn't look like they had any guys that were trying to really break it down other than Yago. All right, we got a comment here. Do you have stats that back up Riccardelli having a bad performance, or just the defense letting him down? This felt like a tidal wave. Like if you've coached before, you've been in a game where the momentum is almost unbearable to put onto that. You had 2-man down situations where you were locked in for 2 minutes.
Right.
You ran out of timeouts because you were getting pressured on the ride. You ran out of timeouts early in that first half. So you're sitting there with like 4 or 5 minutes, and you don't have any timeouts, and it's just goal after goal after, and it is just overwhelming. I don't know what Riccardelli could have done. I thought he had a great performance. I mean, what did he have? 15 saves at the end of this? 16?
Yeah, we got to put it in context too, right? Princeton was
19
one of the
saves.
best shooting teams in the country, so it's not. I think this is a great example. You have to adjust for the quality of the opponent, and this was. I mean, if you do that, I mean, he was fine. That he only had 2 better games this year in terms of, adjusted performance, and so sure, like I think it's tough when you're going up against a team and you're seeing the ball in the back of the net that often, but. Look, this was a really, really good shooting team, and so I don't think it's necessarily fair to say he had a bad game. I think it's just like a lot of goalies aren't going to have a very high save percentage when they play Princeton.
And when you deal with that many shots on that day, I'm looking at the stats here. How many shots did they take? Because they had 36 shots on goal in this game. I mean, if you have a low shooting performance,
53 total shots
in a championship game against a defense that had Sean Light and some badass defenders. It was just a perfect day.
I mean, that's a great stat, because to me, like shot on goal rate, we've talked about this. I always think of shot on goal rate as like how comfortable is the offense? Because if you're feeling comfortable, you're getting to the spots you meant to get to. These are the shots you practice all year. They're probably going to be on cage more often than not. The final number was Princeton, 70% of their shots were on cage. They were very comfortable. Notre Dame, 53.7% of their shots were on cage. Like that is not what we've come to expect from that offense. And so, yeah, it was, the gap on that one is just so stark.
Yeah, you know who's kicking themselves? I think they mentioned this on the cast as well. So shout out Quint and Nish and Kark. But Odierna, the coach O from Syracuse, kicking himself for not going zone against Notre Dame. I mean, they had that in their pocket. Right. I've seen Syracuse run zone, and to see how ineffective they were against this this zone, you're kind of thinking about it. But anyways, let's hear from Coach Madelon and the team after their victory.
And smile. You just brought a championship back to Princeton, the first since 2001. How does it feel?
Man, we're so proud of this group. I'm so proud of what's behind me. Took years in the making, and there are so many great people behind this, especially the Long Orange line. So thrilled, so proud for these guys. It's now a forever team. That's always the goal.
You told me that this group of young men, it was a relentless pursuit of perfection. Angry until you got it right. What's your anger level today?
I'm pretty happy right now, but we were pressing till the end. So always pushing these guys. They love being coached hard. It's a great group. Really proud of them.
All right, he mentioned the Long Orange line. That Princeton fan base is insane, by the way. One of the most rowdy that you'll see at any sporting event, let alone lacrosse. One last quote from the Princeton guys, and then we'll go. We'll continue talking about this. Obviously, we want your guys' comments, but let's hear from Princeton.
I think it's awesome for the program as a whole. It's pretty cool. On Monday, they're honoring the 2001 team, the 25th anniversary. So we all came here to play 2 games, not 1. So just looking forward to playing on Monday.
Yeah, I'd just say it's a testament to all the great alumni that came before us and the culture they instilled in this program, and we're just trying to keep it going.
I'm just so proud, man. I'm so proud of seeing all our alumni in the stands and everyone cheering, and obviously the 25-year reunion of the 2001 team. To be able to do that with all the orange and black support is really cool. But I'm really just so proud that these guys get this opportunity.
Which is a big-time number for a midfielder. Burns snakes inside and scores! A little alchemy from Colin Burns.
All right, so that was early in the contest. Shout out to Princeton and Matt Madelon there, giving some takes after their championship victory. I think that other interview was probably from Saturday's victory as well. But anyways, I mean, look, the contrast between, although Madelon was getting pissed off early as well when they were going on that 3-0 run, Kevin Corrigan looked like he lost his head a couple different times. Now, I was mentioning when I went live on Instagram at halftime that's how Corrigan is. A lot of times, like when the hat comes off, he's getting a little furious. I do some of that myself. But, yeah, it looked like just a total breakdown from Notre Dame. How else do you talk about it on an 11-0 run after going up 3-0?
Yeah.
I don't know how to categorize it. Let's talk a little bit here on Kabiri versus Sean Light versus Spallina. I'm guessing those are the last 3 finalists. Usually, that's how that goes. Before we get out of this game, Kabiri or Light or Spallina.
I mean, I don't think there's any way you can give it to somebody who's not Nate Kabiri. I mean, I've been working on this model. It's like opponent adjusted ratings, and it's trying to take into account everything. And I know he's not. Spallina takes on more of the burden for that offense, and but I mean, Kabiri's numbers are better. He's inched ahead of Spallina in terms of the overall rating, not by a ton, but by enough. And then you throw in the narrative piece as well, around winning the national championship. It's hard to say it should be anyone other than him. I do think if you're Josh Yago, there's certainly there was a lot of chatter about him as a write-in candidate, and if yesterday had gone differently, it would be interesting to see how that was. But like right now, he's got a better rating than Spallina as well, and so it's you look at that and it's like should he have been on there over Duffy? Who knows? At this point, I think it's Kabiri's award, so it almost doesn't matter. But I think it might be more interesting if we were having a Kabiri versus Yago debate at this point than a Kabiri versus Spallina. But again, ultimately, the guy's got the best numbers, he's on the best team, and they just took home the championship. So I don't know how you can give it to anybody but Kabiri.
This is our first year running College Lacrosse live, how we did in this fashion at all, right? We followed the game. Obviously, Zach does a great job at Lax Reference. This is my first year following the Tewaaraton finalists this closely. So I don't really have context of saying, like, how do they give this award out, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm always a fan of whoever they pick, and usually it's a pretty good consensus. It felt like this was a little bit wide open when it came to that finalist list, and I don't mind giving the award to Kabiri with how they finished, to your point, with how he finished, having, I believe, 4 points in this one. He also did extremely well in the Duke game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
What was his total in the Duke game? Yeah, he led with 5 points against Duke. So last 2 games, and then you mentioned their quarterfinal game as well. But I don't mind the Kabiri piece. I could see them giving it to Spallina as like a lifetime almost achievement award, but I don't know if that's how it's given out. Again, this is my first year following it. I'm kind of letting myself off the hook a little bit. But if it's given out as like this kind of like, hey, look at what he's done over time, look at what he means to his team as well, then I could totally see him giving it. And to be honest, Sean Light, when he was on Kabiri, shut him down for the most part. I think I need to look back at how Kabiri scored a lot of his goals or had his points. Let me make sure I get this correct as well. Kabiri, 1 goal, 3 assists in this one, so with 4 points. I would have to look at how those goals took place, but it looked like whenever it was like a mano-y-mano, Sean Light did well. I know they threw some picks at him in this game, and that kind of, he struggled with that sometimes. But I could totally like see a Sean Light. This is just my defensive coordinator speaking. Like, it's like I want it to, but I know in my heart that it's not going to happen. Notre Dame would have had to win and Kabiri be shut down for the Sean Light chatter to make any sense. So,
and it's tough. I mean, this is sort of just the challenge of having a defensive player in what is realistically an offensive award, right? I mean, it's individual matchups, and we've talked about this all year, right? Defense is such a team thing that, to have an individual guy there in the context of an individual award, when, I think you could make the argument that Princeton was like, we're very happy for you to have Sean Light, erase Nate Kabiri in this game because we're going to score 16 goals and win the national championship. Like, we'll take that trade-off every day and twice on Sunday. So, I get it. And it seems to me, do you think they should just make it an offensive award and say the Schmeisser is the Tewaaraton for defenders, because I just don't see how I'm not enough of a defensive guy to say whether Light is a generational talent that should be in the.
He is.
I mean,
I'll answer that question. He is a generational talent. He's been doing it for so long that we don't care, but he is.
Yeah, right. So that's what I mean. But okay, so then you would agree, right? If he's a generational talent and no one is going to have another as good of a shot to win the Tewaaraton as he is for another generation, why are we making? I mean, I'd be more happy if they said we're going to have 5 spots on the Tewaaraton stage: 1 for a face-off guy, 1 for a goalie, 1 for a defender, and then 2 for offensive players. Or maybe expand it and say, okay, we're gonna have 9 spots and whatever. And then because it's just tough. You're gonna make this guy a finalist, but we know he's not gonna win. Realistically, okay, let's say that he did shut down, Spallina and then Kabiri, and Notre Dame goes on and wins the national championship. Final score 16-7. Do you think he would have had a shot then?
I think he would have had a shot. Maybe I'm just being naive. I think if you didn't give him the award in that scenario, then you just who are you going to give the award to?
Especially if he had personally shut down the other 2 finalists and route to a national championship. Yeah,
well, he accomplished the one against Spallina. He did shut down Spallina. I think Spallina had 1 or 2 points in that game. Let me check to make sure. Spallina had 2 points, 0 goals, 2 assists. So he did his job there, but you can't make the same argument for the national championship.
It would have been interesting because I think I'm always a big fan of getting people on the record, right? And that tour, like the tour, that would have been a choice. I mean, that probably would have been a debate in the room and a discussion. And then if they had just given it to Kabiri or Splina anyway, you know the answer to this conversation. As it is, it's hard to see. I mean, I guess the whole career achievement award, giving it to Splina.
He's the face of the sport in a way. He is.
Can you imagine? Like, let's say next year, Kabiri has an okay year. Maybe there's some injury issues. Somebody else in the Ivy League kind of takes that crown from them, and they lose in the first round or don't make the tournament. And then you're sitting there saying, this guy had clearly the best season a year ago, but he didn't get the award as a junior, and he's not going to get a shot as a senior because it's just didn't have the same kind of season. That would be a tough pill to swallow too. I mean, it's like if it's award, if you're saying this is the 2026 Tewaaraton, I feel like the 2026 season should be what is decided on. And if you want to say like the two players are equivalent and we have no preference, but one guy's a senior and another guy's going to have another shot next year, like I can see that, but I don't think
that's what Kabiri's up against, because it's not just that he's a senior, it's that he's Joey Splina. And Joey Splina has been the most notable name in college lacrosse every season that he's been there.
Right.
It's a tough one. I think you're right. Spot on. Kabiri will probably win, but I could see them giving it to Splina. I think the Sean Light stuff is off the board.
So Tewaaraton committee is like, we're deadlocked. We somehow only have an even number of members. We have voted 6-6. Splina 6 for Kabiri. Coach Q, you got his number. We've just called him. You are the deciding vote.
I don't know how this award has been given out in the past. I would give it to the guy who means more to his team. I think Princeton could have won without Kabiri. That's just the way I think about the Tewaaraton, which is probably flawed. I just think
Princeton would have won without Kabiri?
I think so.
That seems not true.
I mean, they won by 7.
I mean, yeah, but like a big reason they won is because like he is part of that offense, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. If they called me, I would not. I would give it to Kabiri.
Yeah,
But again, I give it to whoever has the highest numbers, and he has the highest numbers. So for me, it's a short conversation.
All right, we had some breaking news before the show that Kevin Cassese got hired by UVA. We touched on it early. James Hogan, who is over there on the Lax Sports Network, I believe, is saying Virginia moved on from a coach who won 2 national championships to hire Kevin Cassese. He should be landing one of the best coaches in the country. Time will tell, but this feels like a massive gamble. The entire situation within the program has been incredibly messy here. That's put pretty well. I think, again, when this news broke at the start of the show, I was kind of saying, like, look, Cassese has had a good run, all that stuff. Is he one of the best coaches in the country? That's up for debate, and I think you should try to hire that as the UVA head coach, right? That's one of the top jobs in the sport.
But who's out there who is considered a great coach and has experience? Like I think that's the thing. The number of guys that are sitting there who are a better option. I don't know that there's like Chamati, Connor Busick. Like those are the 2 guys that you look at and say younger on the upswing and have the experience at that level.
I would take, we're getting into semantics a little bit now. I would probably take like Kevin Connery from Michigan over Kevin Cassese. I just don't know if Kevin Cassese is that proven. Like he was at Lehigh, he had some successful years. You mentioned the Sisselberger effect, and then they haven't been that great since he's been there.
Yeah.
It's not like this like Sean Kerwin, like Matt Brown running Denver's like efficient offense where it's like, holy shit, this guy is an absolute masterclass. Just a savant. They haven't been great on offense. I mean, they did finish pretty well. What did the offense do this year? Give me a little UVA offense behind the scenes here.
So the Virginia offense, they finished 5th in the country.
Okay. So you
Up
can
from
put that in
29th
perspective.
last year. So 20, they were not good last season, but they finished 5th this year.
Yeah, a little Brendan Millen effect
Yeah.
at work there. But okay, so they improved in his time. You're right. It comes down to candidate pools as well.
Right.
Like there were reports that Chamati pulled out. I probably would have went Galloway before Cassese. I mean, he's shown to have the chops. I mean, they took Jacksonville took UNC down to the wire at the beginning of the year. I'm not trying to put it on one game, but I mean, he clearly has a contender down there at a school that's not nearly as competitive.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, again, and this is where it's like all the stuff that goes into an administrative decision at the AD level. Like there's so much that goes into that. And it's we can only look at stats and kind of on-field stuff and then speculate about other things. And I don't know. I just feels like there's everything is a gamble the second you say that Lars is not coming back, right? There's not like there's one choice that was so obvious that, because again, and we don't know who said no and who declined to be interviewed and that sort of stuff. So it's hard. I don't know. Monday morning quarterbacking on like defensive alignments is much easier than Monday morning quarterback
in athletic departments.
Right.
Yes, 100%. All right, we have a championship here for the first time in 25 years for Princeton. Looking at 2027, I know it's actually 27 sounds so much later than 2026 in my opinion, but 2027 now, they return a lot.
Yeah.
Does Notre Dame return? I think Notre Dame returns a heavy amount as well. I mean,
they'll lose Iago, but I mean, Luke Miller was the highest rated player on that offense, and he's back for next year. Jeffrey, was at times the prime mover in that offense, and he should be back unless his football career takes off and they lose him like they lost Jordan Faison. But yeah, I mean, I think the question around for them is like face-offs, because that was not a strength for them this year. You lose Light.
Really ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with Will Lynch, he was pretty solid for them when he was kind of ending his career. But, I think the defense is probably going to be fine. They lose Sean Light, but again, defensive people will hate this, but it seems like the theme of this year has been defenses can lose whoever they want. And as long as they've got a good system and a good next man up, they'll be fine. I'm sure Notre Dame's got a good next man up in that spot. So, is Notre Dame going to be back in championship weekend next year? Like, I don't think there's any reason that you'd look at them and say clearly no. So, it is interesting because, I mean, you look at a lot of these guys, like Duke definitely loses. They'll lose the player of the year in Aiden McGuire, and that's maybe one where you'd say, what are they going to bring back? Syracuse, obviously, with that senior class kind of being out the door is a tough one. But between the two, Notre Dame and Princeton, I mean, I don't see any reason to look at either of those two teams and say they're clearly going to have a hard time next year.
Does Notre Dame lose Sean Light? He's a junior.
What? Oh. Well, then I guess not. That's right. Yeah, I guess he didn't get drafted. They don't have to worry about next man up then.
I mean, how dominant are you for 3 years straight? Yeah. And then you get to go back for a 4th year. Man, that's insane. I think I wonder who they lose on the defensive side. Was Will Donovan a senior? I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I would love to have like a list for you guys. I apologize for not having that ready, but I'd love to talk about 2027. Princeton apparently is not losing much.
Yeah.
Who is Princeton losing?
Is Palumbo gone? Because I think he got
Palumbo got drafted 100%. I don't think Kabiri was drafted. I think he's
a junior this year, so he should be back.
Yes. So we get to have the Tewaaraton.
But it's tough too, because we're right now is when transfer portal is really going to heat up, right? Because you've got the top two guys who still have not made a decision about where they're going to go, at least as far as we know. I'm sure there will be some names that get added, after this weekend. So I think in general, I'm a little less. The portal is very important in determining outcomes, just because, there's not a ton of guys in there that are like obviously difference makers. But at the same time, like from a depth perspective, and we have seen some transfers step into a new role and really become, alphas in their offenses. So I think it's tough to say what next year looks like because we just don't have a good idea of where some of those portal guys are going to end up. And once we do, it'll be a little bit more clear. Like I think Syracuse, that's a great example, right? I think they already got one guy out of the portal. I can't remember who it was, but I remember one guy ending up in Syracuse. And so like how much they're able to rebuild that offense through the portal versus bring guys up from the lower class, not lower classes, but how much the freshmen and sophomores are going to take on those bigger roles versus how much the portal is going to impact that probably is going to say a lot about where Syracuse ends up next year from an offensive perspective.
Yeah, Inside Lacrosse does a great job of following the portal tracking. They have a cool website that I'll bring up here in a second. I want to mention Dan Arestia, who has hosted or co-hosted College Lacrosse Live at points this season. He is mentioning that the last Tewaaraton winner to not play in the title game was Pat Spencer in 2019. Mm-hmm. So that's a little tidbit for you. I could definitely, I mean, there was no question, I believe, that year. I wonder who Pat Spencer was going up against, because when Pat Spencer was a part of this game, he was absolutely the best player on the field at all times. I would love to see like a Pat Spencer Sean Light matchup. Give me that. Put that in the blender.
So he in 2019,
who was he going up against?
I don't know who the finalists were, but the five guys. I mean, Brian Costabiel was a defender, so he scored a lot. But like the five guys that I think he was probably up against, it was Spencer Krause, Stephen Rafus, Connor Moran from Notre Dame, Matt Moore from UVA. I'm not sure who. Like I said, I don't know who they ended up on the top in sort of the. But like Spencer was the guy that had the highest opponent adjusted rating.
Yeah.
In that year, again, I don't think Costabiel. He was a long pole, so I don't think he's really in contention for it. But yeah, I mean, he was the top opponent adjusted number for that season. Now I'm curious to see what the gap was, because he was. So
I've got a list here too, Zach, that is very star power heavy. This says Pat Spencer, Michael Sowers at Princeton, TD Ireland at Yale, Jared Bernhardt at Maryland, and Grant Ament were the 2019 men's Tewaaraton finalists. That is an insane list.
Okay, so that does explain it. Like none of those guys was even close to Spencer in terms of opponent adjusted ratings. I mean, yeah, like where is Sowers even on this list?
What a list. To your point about Syracuse getting also just mentioning this real quick, Zach Amend and Cooper Pasco are the two transfers into Syracuse.
Yeah, so I had Amend. Of the guys that I know of that are in the portal, he is the 6th highest rated. So Amend. That's not a nothing pickup. I mean, he ended up with a 66 rating. Shanahan and Haas are like 78 and 76. So he's the 6th highest rated guy in that group right now. Pasco, I think, was a little bit of a lower. Yeah, I would suspect probably in more of a depth player.
So you have a list of guys who are ranked based on in the portal?
Yeah.
Can you give me that list?
Who do you want to know?
Whoever the top guys you think are in that portal.
So top to bottom, and this is the players that had, I think it's like at least combined 10% in terms of like share of shots and share of assists, right? So it's trying to identify some of the guys that were a little bit higher in terms of role in the offense. But the top to bottom of this list is Shanahan from BU, Haas from Ohio State, Ezra Moore from Bellarmine, Dalen John Hill from Jacksonville. I don't even know how to pronounce
these. Are all names I don't see that have committed anywhere yet.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So Chris Maragis from Denver is 5th. Amen 6th. Cullen Lowry from Iona is 7th. Danny Burke from Lowell is 8th. Owen Kovacs from Bucknell is 9th. And then Cole Kaczynski from Bonaventure is 10th. The other kind of notable names, honestly, there's really not a lot of notable names beyond that. But those are the top 10 kind of in terms of the opponent adjusted ratings. And again, the point of this is to basically go and say players who have the largest role in their offense have a higher rating because they're getting more attention from the defense, and then obviously adjusting for the strength of the defense
Sure.
you faced, right? So it's trying to put all that stuff and all the individual efficiency ratings onto one number. So, but that's the top 10 right now. I mean, like I said, it's not a ton of notable names.
There's no, other than House, there's no Iago of this transfer portal, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, I mean, like, and let's put this in perspective, right? Like, if we look at the 2026 adjusted, like the opponent adjusted ratings, Iago is a 92. I mean, last year, let me see. Actually, that's a great question. Let's see what he was last year. So last year he was an 82, almost an 83. So he was quite a bit better from a rating perspective than any of these guys. I mean, Shanahan and Haas are like the upper crust, but the difference between Shanahan and Ezra Moore in third, that would be the difference between Shanahan and Iago from last season, right? Okay. So he was head and shoulders above anybody that's in the group so far.
Okay. All right. Again, we'll look at, and we'll come back during the off season. I'm sure we'll like try to throw on this. Obviously, we're not going to have a College Lacrosse live every week without College Lacrosse happening, but we'll come back and see if we can get you some of these main sticking points, the transfer portal, some of these classes coming in potentially.
The power-wise stuff too, like the whole selection algorithm that I've been following probably way more than anybody else, but like that'll be an interesting story to keep an eye on because there was some chatter, and it was, again, we talked about, it's kind of funny that like the guy that was responsible for this was Lars, and what does that mean? Because I was talking to I had a long chat about this during the games, but apparently like he's still in the IMLCA, the coaches like organization. So like that's the group that is sort of running with this. So who knows how that'll go, but that'll be an interesting story to keep an eye on and see if there's any more movement or discussion about that.
Whenever a team wins the national championship, it's always, and this is what I love about sports, they're kind of cyclical, right? And it's funny because we talk about winning comes down to luck sometimes, but a lot of the times the best programs, the best run programs with the best athletes, the best coach, all this stuff is going to bleed in on itself. But there's so many different ways to do this. You can do it a Bill Belichick style. You can do it a Lars Tiffany style. And I just love the narratives that form out of this. Like I heard somebody talking about how Princeton does not run NIL like the rest of like maybe like an ACC program, and how it's so nice to see in the world of NIL that a team that's constructed like this can win. Yeah. I don't know how true that is. Like I'm not following the NIL money spent and how it differs at Ivy Leagues, but I'm assuming that Ivy's treated a little bit different, and for them to have success in this environment, that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think, any pushback on the idea that like you can't win these days unless you're an ACC or Big Ten school. I mean, I think of it like you can't win if you're not a Big Ten or Ivy or ACC school doing the things you've always done, right? I mean, I think ultimately that's the thing that has to go away. But the idea that like a lower program can't kind of ascend the ranks by doing things differently is crazy to me. Of course they can. Like, there's always going to be underrated players that aren't getting those looks from the big schools. And if you're just like, I'm going to recruit the same players that Notre Dame and Ohio State are, like, yeah, obviously you're not going to
lose that.
So it's like, I think there's programs that are, and, we saw it in baseball, right? And is this the Moneyball moment for lacrosse? It says, look, we're not going to be able to compete from a financial perspective and an NIL perspective with some of these schools. So we've got to get smart about how we develop a roster, how we, I think that'll be interesting to see over the next, because, the Ivy League, the other side of that is like, there's so much support from an Ivy League perspective in terms of like the allure of that education and, the financial support that they can give families. So, I think there may be another side to that. Like Ivy League is pretty well resourced in some ways, even if not necessarily in the NIL world, but I think, and again, I just love the idea that like we could have an Albany team, ascend to the top of college lacrosse like they did with the Thompson twins. And I don't think it's necessarily find the next pair of Thompson twins, because those guys are probably going to go elsewhere. But that doesn't mean that's the only way to build a program. And, I think that it's just you got to have a program that's willing to take some risks and do things a little bit differently. But there's no reason you can't get to the top. And I think Princeton did show that, look, no, it's not just an Ivy League, or it's not just an ACC Big Ten monopoly at this point.
Shout out to the coaching staff and the players at Princeton here. I mean, they were just far and away the best in every facet of that game, in my opinion. I mean, the creativity on offense, the effort on the ground balls. At one point, they were saying that Princeton was winning the non-face-off ground balls 19-3.
Yeah.
I've never seen a stat line like that in the first quarter of a game, and they just took the game to them. Defense, I think you mentioned, has been stellar. The coaching staff has this team playing in transition smartly. It didn't look ridiculous, like the very Syracuse-esque thing that we saw throughout the season, which was like, hey, take a lot of risk, but they also got bit by a lot of that. This was just clinical at every step of the way. And that shout out again to players that get it done and coaching staff that kind of put them in position.
How much time do you think Kevin Corrigan is going to spend during fall practice?
Working on zone. Yeah.
You mentioned the cyclical piece. Like, everybody's gonna be like, do not play Notre Dame zone, because they will have spent all offseason doing nothing but practicing against the zone.
Such a great point. I can't believe how effective it was against them. All right, we had some other things to get to. Again, we're going to try to bring you College Lacrosse Live, hopefully in the offseason in different ways. One is looking at the upcoming, rating systems, like Zach was saying, but also looking at some of these teams for next year. Daniel's saying in the chat, Syracuse is losing 75% of its offense, needs a major infusion from the portal, also needs an upgrade in midfield defense. Yeah, I mean, they are losing. Who are they losing other than Spallina?
Right? Roa and Leo were also seniors. I'm not sure about
a big senior class.
I think that's the downside. You always hear about the senior class. But this is a tough thing. Like, I mean, is it the portal that they have to go to the portal? Like, why not? I mean, they recruited these younger guys. Like, some of them must be okay. So I guess it's tough. I think that the risk is if you go to the portal and then is a guy that played at a lower tier school going to be able to come in right away and have that same level? I mean, if you're adjusting for that, then maybe you know what you're doing. But I don't know. I guess I just would love to see a team like Syracuse say, look, we recruited these guys. They know the system. They know what we expect of them. Let's develop those players into the next round of stars. But every program's got a different way to go about that, I guess.
One of the things I'm going to get involved in here as the year goes on and we kind of lose this game portion of the college game is the recruiting side of things. So expect that on the channel here relatively soon. I don't know. Again, this is going to be a journey that I take. Okay, so I'm not going to be great at it at first. I don't know the landscape in full. But to your point, Zach, when you look at the class of 2026, I would say, so the one that's coming in this next year, Syracuse is 12th on that list. Again, this is from Inside Lacrosse. I don't have the full and updated list from the other ranking systems and all this stuff, but Duke seems to be reloading really well with a top class. They had, I believe, some young players on that offense as well, other than Johnson and Sloat. Notre Dame's reloading here. Maryland, UVA. We'll see what the UVA has any decommits. I know they had a couple since the Lars news dropped. So you got, the who's on here, right? Notable list that's not on here. Again, we're not using Inside Lacrosse as like the NLBL. Cornell is 20th on this list. Again, I don't want to speak too much of it because they're like, what the hell, so I'm pinning Cornell as out of the top 10 now. I'm totally not doing that. Daniel saying, thank you guys for your work this year. You both have done a great job. Appreciate that very much. Zach, any thoughts on those recruiting pieces or those teams on that list?
I mean, I know less about it than you do. It's tough. Like, where do the stars come from? I don't know how they come with that stuff. You always hear, these guys were not heavily recruited and they end up being some of the best players in the country. Yep. And I think this goes back to the idea that, like, if you're a lower tier program and you're chasing the IL 5 stars, like, probably not going to get them. Like, how do you go and find those diamonds in the rough that end up being all Americans? And, it's tough. I don't know. I guess the idea of, from a statistical perspective, trying to, compare different programs around the country. And then you've got the whole club lacrosse thing that fits into this. And, I don't know. I don't know how they could possibly come up with these rankings, and more power to them that they do. Certainly gives us something to talk about over the offseason.
I'm excited to dive into it, but it's also very daunting because again, there's so many players. How do you do it the right way? Again, like I think a lot of the times these rankings are cast in a bad light to,
Right.
and rightfully so. There's people that probably pay for rankings. I've heard a lot of that narrative thrown around in the youth game, but I would do it the right way.
But it's great that they do it, right? And I don't think IL is putting out a list. It's like, we know this is wrong, but we're doing it for nefarious purposes, right? Like they're putting in a lot of work to kind of create these rankings and have some kind of conception of who and where and all that sort of stuff. And honestly, even just collecting the fact that we've got commitments is a useful service that they're providing. I think they would tell you, like, don't treat them as a forecast. But this is our best guess at who's good and who's not. To my knowledge, no one's ever like said, okay, here's how all those things played out over a course of a career. Because again, how could you, right? There's injuries, there's all sorts of things that go into that. We got to have something to talk about over the offseason, I guess.
That's totally fair. It is fun to go back. I in my research, I call it research, just like up late at night, but looking at the classes of like 2023 that are now graduating, right, or 2022, it's fun to go through the top 100 in that list because you're like, oh, there it is. Joey Spalina at number 1, and you got all these other guys. But all right, man, we do have to run here in just a second. We are over time, but we want to give some love to the rest of collegiate lacrosse. They obviously had their championships. So we're going to quickly play and run through. I mean, we're going lightning. I apologize for not leaving more time for this, but let's go to a big fan of the show who has been on here, Kelly Monty Hiller, Northwestern, winning the championship.
Continue to move your feet now.
Taylor, great find. Lacasio buries it. Off a terrific feed from Madison Taylor. Elite vision. The Wildcats convert on the power play.
This season, they just loved each other. They loved each other so hard, and it was just a really fun thing. We knew win or lose today, we would have already won because of the experience we had together, and it was just a really special year.
So would you want championship weekend back here again sometime?
Oh boy, yeah. I think this was really, really special. In the beginning of the game, I just said to myself, when those rockets went off on the roof, I'm like, this is my dream right here, to bring this to Northwestern. All the people that have helped us get here, the alums, the administrators, and then all the work that went into this weekend. I'm really proud. I'm proud that the Midwest showed up, and it was a great game today.
Well, let's get you a new hat.
All right, shout out to Coach Amani Hiller there and the Northwestern Wildcats. They've won a lot, but over the last 10 to 15 years, it's kind of been up or down. They've missed out a lot. They won a ton in the late 2000s and early aughts, and then it's been rough. And to have this one, I mean, this is a great victory for them. I would be severely frustrated if I was the UNC players. I don't know if you, or coaches, I don't know if you caught this game, Zach, but there was a couple calls late in this one, especially when UNC scored to I think it was either go up one or tied. It was very close, and it got called back because apparently they followed through on a head, and it looked very gray area to me. They kind of got screwed with that, which is tough. But anything on this Northwestern game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so jealous of the location, right? I don't know if you've ever seen that stadium, but it's like on the shores of Lake Michigan. It was cold there until last week probably, but end of May in Chicago is about as good as it gets. So what a great location for that game. I mean, you'd almost say have it there every year, but then you do have the risk of Northwestern having a home championship game, more often than not. But yeah, I mean, watching from afar, the rules stuff going on in women's lacrosse, it's just such an interesting, because as the game gets closer and closer and closer to the speed and the pace of the men's game, but then you have to keep people safe because no one's got helmets on, and it's just I don't know. I'm very glad I'm not in charge of trying to kind of square that circle, because the shooting space stuff and just all the ways that, again, you're trying to protect players, but the incentives that creates just seem to make it an unwinnable task for the officials and people trying to understand what happened. And yeah, I don't know, it seems like one of those things that they're going to have to figure something out, because the current way that they do things, it just seems like every week the conversation is not about the quality of the play and the precision and the technical skill that these players have. It's about officiating and calls, and there's no bad guy. It's just it seems like one of those things. It's a situation that is, you can't square the circle of having the speed and the power of that game the way it's evolved, and also have no helmets.
I think you put that perfectly. I don't know how much I could add to it. I don't feel like a lot. I got a lot of thoughts on the women's game and the officiating that happens there, but I don't know of a sport that's more influenced by the officiating and the calls that happen because of the things on the field, where you have a shot 8 yards from the cage because somebody made a decision that the girl pushed too hard. It's really well officiated in the sense of the contact at the collegiate level, at the high school level. It is all over the place. I've been to some girls' games where I'm just like, so she contacted her, so there's a penalty there, and it's just to your point, it's all over the place. It doesn't feel like it feels like there's a lot that needs to be done on the rule side for the women's game.
But at the same time, I mean, I feel out on a limb talking about it because
it's fair.
I'm sure there are would be people listening to this saying like, no, it's not. That's not an issue. Like it's not. Here's what they need to do, and it is obvious, and but it's just from afar. Like it's just tough. You hate to see how much of it comes down to conversations and arguments about officiating, and especially a game like this that's such a great game, and you've got such a great team from Carolina trying to go 2 for 2. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if that's if we're wrong and there's a quick fix. Like that's great, but you always assume if there was a quick fix, they probably would have made it already.
When I hear the booth talk about the same things the conversation we're having, there's something up, right? It's not a kind of us out here on an island saying fix this and men's lacrosse this, and it doesn't look like our sport. It's the people that are at the highest level of the women's game that are saying the same thing. So, all right, very quickly, we've got a Tufts back-to-back Natty. I'm sure that they will not go D1. I don't think that I know that everyone's throwing that out there. Why at this point? Just keep rolling. But they rolled over RIT big time.
A whistle, final moments. Fire does give it up. With just seconds remaining for Tufts. In 2026, Tufts, tremendous again. The Jumbos have done it. For the first time in school history, it's a three-peat for Tufts. They win the 2026 Division III National Championship.
Utter dominance. You won.
My favorite stat for Tufts is they finished the 2022 season as the 31st ranked defense. And, you hear so much about their pace and speed and offense and offense and offense. 31st in 2022. They were 14th in 2024. The last 2 years, 4th and 1st. They finished as the #1 defense in Division III lacrosse and the second best offense in Division III lacrosse. So, I'm always a big fan of that. You hear about the offense and you hear about the scoring, and this was the best defense in the country. And so it's really, when you have #1 defense and #2 offense, it's not a surprise to see them holding the trophy at the end.
They really have had a fantastic run of a couple decades here, going back all the way to those teams that were taken over in the early 2000s, and just rolled absolutely in this last 3-year time span. What else can you say? I mean, it's just dominance. There was something about like they haven't lost. The senior class hasn't lost an away game. They lost 3 home games. They hadn't lost an away game in their whole time as a class. It's just utter dominance on that side. All right, anything left for Tufts RIT here, Division III? Okay. All right, last piece here. The best game of the weekend, other than the women's side having that UNC Northwestern game, we had Tampa taking down the Fighting John Grudens take down Adelphi here. Adelphi being, I believe, the favorite to win again, and Tampa got it done.
Now Ortega, the All-American shorty matchup. Ortega with it. He shoots, he scores! He scores! national championship for Tampa. The Spartans spectacular in 2026. For the second time in school history, Tampa wins the Division II national championship. It's Tampa time in Charlottesville.
Fans on the field rushing in overtime. I mean, that's a great experience for that team. That coaching staff has been at it for a long time. Tampa's been a top program, so to see them win their second is pretty strong. Nice shot, by the way, right down the alley. I mean, he stuck that far corner.
Can you imagine
Good
the
shot.
feeling of an overtime national championship game winner? Like, are you kidding me?
He's going to have it forever. All right, nothing breaking, I believe, here on the Cassese stuff as we end the episode. We appreciate you guys all the way through. If you were here live all season, you're a G. Absolute G. Great support. Before you leave on this last show, please leave a like. But those of you that watched afterwards and throughout this season at various points, it's been a great experience, man. You never know. With a new show, you never know what it even looks like, what happens, and I think it's been a success, man. So this has been a fun one, Zach. I appreciate you as well.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. I mean, it was fun. It's you like to have the stats should turn into stories, and I think that was the cool thing about this is getting to come every week and kind of tell the stories that the stats suggest, and hopefully it was fun for everybody listening.
All right, the stats turn into stories, and I like that a lot. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you in 2026. We'll continue to do this. I'm not going to say 27. You'll see us. We'll continue to do this in some form or fashion. Had a really great time. Until next time, whenever that is. Thank you, guys.